My sister erased my alarm, hid my keys, and ruined my Harvard shot. 10 years later, I'm head of surgery there, and she needed me to save her life. My sister pretended to be me when she contacted the interview site to cancel, erased my alarm, and concealed my car keys. Around 8:30 a.m., I woke up. Harvard Medical School called me 14 times and wanted to know why I hadn't arrived for my 7:30 a.m. interview. I had worked for 4 years to prepare for this interview, which would decide whether or not I was accepted into one of the top medical schools in the nation. I had left my phone on my nightstand, but it was plugged in across the room. I had fully switched off my alarm. When I picked it up, I noticed the voicemails, missed calls, and the urgent email from the admissions office. I listened to the first voicemail with trembling palms. The voice of a professional woman, a little worried. "This is Dr. Sarah Bennett from Harvard Admissions, Miss Turner. You were supposed to show up for your interview at 7:30 a.m. today, but you haven't. In the event of an emergency, kindly give us a call back right away to reschedule." 25 minutes later, the second voicemail was less kind. More annoyance from the same woman. "Now, Miss Turner, someone posing as you has called to inform us that you have decided not to continue your studies at Harvard. To make sure information is correct, we need you to get in touch with us personally." The admissions director left the third voicemail. "We're canceling your interview, Miss Turner. At 8 a.m. this morning, we received a call. Posing as you and saying you've chosen to go after other chances. You must get in touch with us within an hour and provide an explanation if this was not you. If not, we're going to proceed with other applicants." I phoned back right away, received voicemail, and frantically left a message saying that something was wrong because I had never called or canceled. 2 additional attempts yielded no response. I phoned the main office, sent emails, and eventually spoke with an assistant who informed me that the admissions committee had already filled my spot and was moving on. My phone number had sent them a very obvious call. They couldn't do anything with my phone number until I could show it wasn't me. I looked at my call history. At 8 a.m., nothing is leaving for Harvard. However, my phone wasn't on my nightstand when I woke up. It was across the room. My sister Sophia was in the kitchen brewing coffee when I came downstairs. She was 28 years old, 2 years my senior, and had been accepted to medical school 3 years prior on her first attempt. She was at the top of her class, completing her 3rd year at a separate program, and fulfilling every wish our parents had ever had. When I walked in, she glanced up and grinned. "You're up late, morning. You had that interview, didn't you?" Everything fell into place. My vehicle keys were gone from the rack by the entrance, where I normally put them. The phone had relocated across the room, and the alarm had been erased. During my gap year, I worked as an EMT and lived at home to save money. 2 months ago, Sophia returned home, stating that she wanted to save money before applying for residence because her apartment lease had finished. Having both girls back under one roof had delighted our parents. I said, "What did you do?" I spoke in a steady, icy tone. She sipped her coffee. "What are you discussing?" "You canceled my interview. You called them pretending to be me." "That's insane. Why would I do that?" Her gaze briefly wavered before she said, "Because you've spent 3 years being the golden child, and you couldn't stand me getting into a better program than yours." I witnessed it. Contentment. This was what she intended to accomplish. There was no miscommunication or accident here. She had purposefully ruined the most significant interview of my life. Her words, "You're being paranoid. Maybe you just overslept, and you're looking for someone to blame." My alarm was deleted. My phone was moved. My car keys are missing. And someone called for my phone number to cancel. Maybe you did it in your sleep. You've always been an anxious mess before a big event. Remember when you had that panic attack before the MCAT? As she stood in our parents' kitchen sipping coffee, she was lying to me about ruining my whole future. I snatched up my phone, opened the call log, and thrust it in her face. "There's no outgoing call at 8 o'clock, but they said someone called from my number. How did you do it?" "I have no idea what you're talking about, but honestly, Emily, this victim mentality is exactly why you're not getting into top programs. You need to take responsibility for your own failures." I felt like screaming and grabbing her coffee to hurl it against the wall. Rather, I returned upstairs, secured my door, and made another call to Harvard. I spoke with Dr. Bennett personally this time. I clarified that I had never canceled, that someone had called posing as me, and that at the time, my phone was showing no outgoing calls. She attentively listened before responding. "Miss Turner, the person who called knew specific details about your application, your undergraduate institution, your MCAT score, your research experience. This wasn't a random prank. It was my sister. She has access to all that information. We live in the same house." Can you prove it was her? No, but I can prove it wasn't me. My phone has no call log. Someone must have used a spoofing app or called from a different phone. Dr. Bennett let out a sigh. Even if that's true, we've already moved your slot to another candidate. Our interview season is nearly complete. I'm sorry, but there's nothing we can do this cycle. Thus, there are no repercussions when my sister ruins my opportunity to attend my ideal school. Although I can see your aggravation, this is a family concern, rather than an admissions issue in the absence of hard evidence. Next cycle, you are invited to reapply. She ended the call. My sister couldn't take me succeeding, so I sat on my bed and stared at the wall, trying to comprehend that 4 years of hard work had suddenly vanished. I had interviews at 8 o'clock after submitting applications to 10 other medical schools. On the morning of each of my interviews, Sophia unexpectedly became extremely busy. I began hiding my vehicle keys in my bed, setting 5 alarms, and sleeping with my phone under my pillow. She was not someone I trusted with anything pertaining to my applications. Although they were aware of the stress, my parents didn't get it. They stated I was exaggerating, and that Sophia would never do such a thing when I attempted to describe what she had done, that I could have slept in too late and was humiliated and trying to find someone to blame. There was nothing their golden child could do wrong. I simply couldn't get my life together as the younger daughter. I had 5 interviews and 2 of them went nicely. 1 didn't go well since I couldn't concentrate due to my sabotage paranoia. 2 were mediocre. I was turned down by 3 colleges and placed on a wait list at 2. Sophia received the residence of her choice. She had a celebratory supper hosted by my parents. She gave me this little, contented grin that no one else could see as I sat there grinning as they celebrated her achievement. I reapplied to medical schools and worked as an EMT for the next year. I was given my own apartment this time, a little studio that I could hardly afford. I was no longer going to live with her in that house. I wasn't going to give her another chance to ruin my future. I received 8 interviews after submitting 13 applications, and I was accepted into 2 programs. One was a reputable, well-established public university, but none of them were Harvard. That September, I agreed and got started. Sophia began her neurosurgery residency at a prominent Boston hospital the same year. She made my parents very pleased. She was training to operate on the brain. They had never heard of the state school I was attending. Medical school was harsh. I considered giving it up every day. The amount of work was overwhelming. It was a fierce competition. Everyone in my class appeared to be more intelligent, well-prepared, and gifted by nature. To stay up, I studied twice as hard as everyone else. I didn't pass my first anatomy test. Barely made it through pharmacology, stayed in the library till 3 in the morning, learning drug interactions and routes by heart. However, I possessed something that the other pupils did not: fury. I was furious with my sister for what she had done. Every time I felt like giving up, I imagined her grinning at that dinner table, erasing my alert, and taking my Harvard interview with no repercussions. When fatigue and self-doubt told me to quit, that anger kept me going. Since cardiothoracic surgery is the most difficult surgical specialty with the longest training, the greatest stakes, and the most grueling hours, I chose to specialize in it. Sophia had decided on neurosurgery because of its prestige. I wanted to outperform her in something she couldn't do, so I went with cardiothoracic. We began clinical rotations in our 3rd year of medical school. I put in as many extra hours as I could, stayed late to see surgeries, and volunteered for every surgery. Attendees took note. Following a particularly challenging case, one of them, cardiothoracic surgeon Dr. Jonathan Scott, drew me aside. "You've been in the O more than any other medical student this year. Why?" "Because I love it and I want to be the best." He looked at me for a while. "Surgery isn't about being the best. It's about being good enough to save lives when it matters." "Then I want to be good enough that I never lose a patient because I wasn't skilled enough." Slowly, he nodded. "You've got the drive. Now you need the precision. Come observe my cases. I'll teach you what I can." I was mentored by Dr. Scott. Despite his harshness and demands, he recognized something in me. He gave me more freedom than most medical students do. During operations, ask questions, seal incisions, and fold retractor. He challenged me to think more quickly, move more accurately, and comprehend not just what we were doing, but also why. I placed in the top 10% of my class when I graduated from medical school. Respectable, but not the best. Applied to residencies and received interviews from 6 programs. Matriculated at a cardiothoracic surgery, reputable Philadelphia program. Although not the best, it is renowned for turning forth top-notch surgeons. In the same year, Sophia completed her residency in neurosurgery. She secured a position at a prestigious Boston hospital, earning twice as much as I would as a resident. For her white coat ceremony, my parents took a plane. Since it was the same weekend and they had already committed to hers, they chose not to attend mine. It was terrible to be a resident. 90-hour work weeks, 12, 14, and 16-hour operations, and attendants who yelled at you for even the slightest error. Patients who passed away even though we did everything correctly. I dropped more weight than was good for me. Ceased getting more than 4 hours of sleep per night. Lived in a condition of adrenaline and weariness all the time. However, I became better, quicker, and more accurate. I was the resident attending requested for challenging patients by my 3rd year. The one who remained composed when things went wrong in the one they trusted with challenging dissections. I was the most naturally gifted surgical resident that Dr. Scott, who had relocated to Philadelphia and was now an attending at my hospital, had trained in 20 years. I didn't think he was real. I was aware that I lacked innate skill. I had developed all of my skills by practice, anger, and a will to settle for anything less than great. I was the head resident in my 5th year of residency. The person who was summoned for every emergency, every complication, and every patient circling the drain at 3 in the morning, as well as the person in charge of scheduling, supervising the other residents, and operating the service. I had hardly an apartment anymore, just a space to store clothing and take the odd shower, and I lived in a hospital. In Boston, Sophia was doing quite well. My parents claimed that she was dating a prominent lawyer, delivering speeches at conferences, and having her work published in prestigious publications. For her, everything was ideal. Other than forced conversations during unavoidable family holidays, I hadn't talked to her in 5 years. She had never shown regret or even admitted her mistake. My parents believed I had nothing to be angry about. I was admitted to Mass General's cardiothoracic surgery fellowship in Boston following my residency. Additional 2 years of training under the nation's top surgeons. Sophia remained in Boston. I kept my move there a secret from her. The camaraderie was tremendous. More responsibilities, more complicated situations. The hearts I operated on were declared inoperable by previous surgeons. Doing repairs, transplants, and other operations requiring minuscule accuracy. I lost clients. When doing heart surgery, it is unavoidable. I did, however, preserve more than I lost. Compared to the other guys, I had a better success rate. Attendees took note. The chairman of the heart surgery department, Dr. David Miller, began assigning me situations that other fellows weren't prepared for. My mother called me a year into my fellowship. She was in tears. At work, Sophia had passed out. They hurried her to the emergency room due to a brain aneurysm. She required urgent surgery. I was emotionless, only detached and logical. Which hospital? Mass General. They're prepping her for surgery now. Can you come? I'm already at Mass General. I'll find out what's happening. After hanging up, I proceeded to the operating room. I located Sophia's chart. It was a huge, irregular, and troublesome aneurysm. High chance of rupture when doing surgery. High chance of mortality or stroke. One of the top neurosurgeons in the department, Dr. Mark Evans, was assigned to her case, but he was engaged in another lengthy procedure. Now they needed someone to run it. The attending neurosurgeon inquired about availability. I said, then thought, I can do it. After examining me, Dr. Scott said, you're cardiac, not neuro. I've observed enough neuro cases. I know the anatomy, and she's my sister. There was silence in the room. Your sister? Yes. And if she dies while we're waiting for Evans to finish, that's on us. Dr. Scott looked at me for a while. Can you be objective? I'm always objective. That wasn't totally accurate. However, I was able to distinguish between medical necessity and emotional impulses. He gave a nod. Then scrub in. I'll supervise. I used hands that didn't tremble to get ready for surgery. With her skull shaved and marked for surgery, Sophia lay on the table unconscious. She was unaware that I was going to slit her brain. I was guided through it by Dr. Scott. The dangers, the perspectives, the strategy. We cautiously opened her head and found the aneurysm. The scans didn't reveal how bad it was. Bigger, with flimsy walls that may burst at any time. She would either bleed into her brain or have a stroke if she made a mistake. I worked with a level of accuracy I was unaware of. Every motion was regulated, and every clip was positioned precisely. I hardly needed Dr. Scott's guidance. I could sense the difference between vessels that were damaged and healthy tissue. May view the blood flow's design as a map. I inserted the last clip 6 hours into the procedure. They secured the aneurysm. Blood flow was securely redirected. No blood, no rupture. Sophia would live. I left the O when we closed her up. In the waiting area were my parents. When they noticed that I was wearing surgical scrubs, they stood. My mom inquired, "How is she?" Stable. The surgery went well. She'll need monitoring, but she should make a full recovery. With relief, my mother fell into my father. Thank God. Who was the surgeon? We need to thank them. My surgical cap came off. I was the surgeon. They gazed at me. You? But you're not a neurosurgeon. I'm a surgical fellow. I know enough. And I was available when she needed someone immediately. There was something complex about my father's face. You operated on your sister? Yes, but you two haven't spoken in 5 years. You hate her. I considered that. About the 5 years of silence, the stolen interview, and the erased alarm. I don't hate her. I just don't trust her. But she needed surgery, and I was capable of doing it. So I did. My mom broke down in tears. Thank you. Thank you for saving her. I gave a nod and turned to go. Even if I had spared her life, everything she had done to me still remained. After 3 days, Sophia awoke. I wasn't present when it took place. I spent 9 hours in another surgery, this time for a heart transplant. She was awake and spoke to my parents by the time I was done. That night, I dropped by her room. She appeared frail and pale, but she was still alive, sitting up in bed with bandages over her head. Her face altered as she noticed me standing in the doorway. Shock followed by recognition. Emily. Hey. I remained in the entrance. Didn't approach. They said you did my surgery. I did. Why? Because you needed one, and I was available. She lowered her gaze to her hands. I could have died. Yes. The aneurysm was in a bad location, but I placed the clips correctly and rerouted blood flow. You'll be fine. I don't understand. After everything, why would you help me? I entered the room and shut the door after myself. You want to talk about everything? Okay, let's talk about it. She became quite motionless. You sabotaged my Harvard interview, deleted my alarm, hid my keys, called pretending to be me to cancel. You destroyed my chance at my top choice school because you couldn't handle me being better than you. Emily, I'm not done. You did it and got away with it. Our parents didn't think I was telling the truth. You never said sorry. You simply watched me suffer for 5 years while you were successful in everything. I took a step toward her bed. Here's what you didn't comprehend though. I was improved by your sabotage of me. Every hour you were asleep, I was researching. I offered to do every procedure while you were at ease. Because I refused to be anything other than exceptional, I was able to save every patient. That resulted from your actions. Sophia was weeping now, her face streaming with silent sobs. You made me into a surgeon who could save your life when you needed it. So yeah, I operated on you. Not because I forgave you, not because we're sisters, but because I'm a surgeon and you needed surgery, and I'm good enough now that I could do it right. I turned to go. Before I got to the door, she started talking. I'm sorry. I halted, but I didn't look back. She went on to say, I was jealous. You were always more intelligent and motivated than I was. I put a lot of effort into being the greatest, and you just comprehended everything. I freaked out when you got that Harvard interview. I reasoned that everyone would realize you were superior to me if you went there. I sabotaged you, and I've been regretting it ever since. I knew I was to blame after seeing you suffer. However, I was too arrogant to acknowledge it. You'll be all right, I told myself. You'll get accepted to another school. However, you weren't okay, and because of my own insecurities, I betrayed your confidence in our relationship. I pivoted. You're correct. You did. And it's not resolved by your apologies. You're my sister, but I understand. And even though I detest what you did, I wasn't going to let you die when you required surgery. Sophia dabbed at her face. Thank you for saving my life, even though I didn't deserve it. No one should have to pass away from an aneurysm. Not even you. We didn't start dating again right once, and I didn't forgive her simply because she said she was sorry, but something changed when she finally acknowledged the harm and accepted what she had done. It didn't make the 5 years of suffering go away, but it was something. I left her room and returned to work. After her operation, Sophia fully healed, returned to work 3 months later and then departed Boston to take a position in California. Before she went, she texted me. I'm happy that you outperformed me as a surgeon. You deserved it. After finishing my fellowship at the top of my class, I received an offer to work as an attending cardiac surgeon at Mass General, the same hospital where I had operated on my sister and demonstrated my ability to put professional need ahead of personal sentiments. This time, Both of my parents attended my white coat ceremony and expressed their regret for not believing me about the Harvard interview, for blindly supporting Sophia, and for failing to see the amount of effort I had put in to get here. At my ceremony, Dr. Scott spoke about my precision, my dedication, and my ability to handle complex cases that other surgeons avoided. He said that I was one of the most talented cardiac surgeons he had trained in 30 years. I accepted their apology, but I kept in mind that I had come this far despite, not because of, them. He was unaware of Sophia's efforts to undermine me, the erased alarm, or the stolen interview. He simply recognized my extraordinary ability to save lives. After 3 years of attending, I published a paper on a novel method of fixing complicated heart valve defects, which was picked up by major journals. I began receiving invitations to speak at conferences, and hospitals began hiring me for leadership roles. I remained at Mass General and concentrated on developing a program for high-risk cardiac patients, those that other surgeons said were too far gone. I became known for taking cases that seemed hopeless and somehow bringing patients through, and I had one of the highest success rates in the nation. Sophia and I now speak occasionally, not frequently, but occasionally. My parents tried to make up for years of favoritism by attending my lectures, asking about my research, and telling their friends about their daughter, the cardiac surgeon. She called on birthdays and texted about cases she found interesting. We weren't close, and probably never would be, but we weren't enemies either. She had ruined something between us that couldn't be completely fixed, but we'd managed to survive together. 10 years after Sophia ruined my Harvard interview, I received a call from Harvard, and Dr. Bennett, the admissions director who told me there was nothing she could do, was now the chair of their surgery department. It felt hollow at times, as if they only valued me now that I had achieved visible success. But I accepted it because harboring resentment took energy I needed for surgery. Why me? They wanted me to come lead their new cardiac surgery program, she stated. I inquired. Because of your outstanding success rate and the way your study is changing the way we handle complicated valve repairs, you'd fit right in. You rejected my application 10 years ago. A pause occurred. I recall. You said your interview was ruined by your sister. She did. Years later, she finally acknowledged it. One more pause. Then I owe you an apology and a job offer if you're interested. After giving it some thought, I realized that the school that had turned me down was now offering me a leadership role, and that the interview Sophia had stolen had helped me become better than I would have been if I had been accepted the first time. I'm interested, but I have conditions. After 3 weeks of negotiations, Harvard agreed to all of my demands, including autonomy over my program, research funds, and the freedom to teach residents how I saw fit. I took the job, relocated to Baltimore, and began developing a heart surgery program that concentrated on the patients whom everyone else had rejected. When I was asked to speak at a national surgery conference 6 months into my new position on the subject of overcoming challenges in surgical training, I nearly rejected. Since I'm not very good at public speaking, but my former mentor Dr. Scott persuaded me to accept. There were hundreds of surgeons, residents, and medical students in the lecture hall. I stood at the podium and told them my story, which was utterly silent, about how I applied to medical school and got my top interview, about how my sister deleted my alarm, hidden my keys, and called to cancel while I was asleep, and about waking up to missed calls and dashed hopes. I told them about my sister's aneurysm and the decision to operate despite everything she had done, about being rejected, reapplying, choosing cardiothoracic surgery out of rage, and about working twice as hard as everyone else to prove I deserved to be there. Because she was worried that I would surpass her, she ruined my interview. And you know what? I've improved. Her actions forced me to put in more effort than I otherwise would have, not because I'm inherently more gifted. She unintentionally produced the surgeon who saved her life while attempting to ruin my future. Applause broke out throughout the room. There was a 2-minute standing ovation. Following the talk, dozens of people approached me to share their personal stories of being betrayed by family members, having parents who didn't believe in them, having siblings who competed instead of supporting them, or being told they weren't good enough as medical students. They said it gave them hope to hear that someone had overcome such betrayal and still succeeded. I had a ringing phone that night. I nearly didn't respond, Sophia, but something compelled me to answer. I watched your lecture, she said. Someone posted it online. I waited. All of your statements were accurate. I attempted to ruin your future, and as a result, you outperformed me. Her voice broke. I'm sorry. I've mentioned it before, but until I heard you share that tale with a group of strangers, I don't believe I truly realized what I got from you. I took your ideal school away from you and made you start over, and for some reason, you were still more successful than I was. I didn't succeed despite you. I stated, I succeeded because I refused to let what you did define me. I understand, but you have the right to be upset about it. You are free to despise me. I'm not hostile toward you. I just do not trust you, and I doubt that I ever will. She remained silent for a while. That's reasonable. I deserved that. It wasn't precisely closure, but it was recognition, and we hung up after a few more minutes of conversation. My program at Harvard expanded, and within 3 years we were ranked among the best cardiac surgery programs in the nation. I trained residents who later became department chairs at other hospitals, and I published papers that changed surgical protocols across the country. She recognized what she had done, and I had moved past allowing it to control me. My patients, those who everyone claimed were too dangerous, too complicated, or too ill, survived at rates that attracted the attention of other programs. I received honors, invitations to join the editorial boards of prestigious journals, and offers to chair departments at hospitals throughout the nation. Since Harvard was the school that had rejected me, and I was now improving it, I stayed because I had created something significant there. I received a letter from the medical school 15 years after the ruined interview, stating that they wanted to establish an endowment scholarship in my name for students who had overcome major obstacles to become doctors. Students like me had been battling against unsupportive families, rebuilding after setbacks, and persevering in the face of all the reasons to give up. We called it the Second Chance Scholarship because sometimes the route you didn't select brings you to a better place than you could have ever dreamed of. I said yes, and put my own money into the fund. When Sophia learned about the scholarship, she called. That is amazing. You're assisting those who are similar to you and us. You overcame obstacles too, I corrected. You were one of them, but you're no longer one of them. I was your hurdle, but they were different ones. She made a sound that was a mix of relief and sadness as she laughed. When did you become so grown up? When I stopped letting what you did matter more than what I accomplished. After that we spoke more frequently, not always, but enough that I was invited to her wedding. She was among the first individuals to purchase my books on advanced cardiac surgical procedures. We would never have the connection we should have because of the damage and years we had lost, but we did have something in common. An awareness that we had both made errors and had moved past them. When my textbook was out, my parents had a dinner party. There were 2 daughters there, both successful in their careers, and my father made a toast about how proud he was of his surgeon daughters. I reflected on the years he had not trusted me. The times he had blindly accepted Sophia's version of events, but I also imagined him attending my lectures now, reading my papers, and attempting to comprehend my work. To my daughters, he added, lifting his glass. Both of whom demonstrated that willpower is more important than luck. We drank to that, to resolve, to becoming individuals our younger selves wouldn't recognize, to rebuilding lives from the rubble of treachery and sabotage. I caught Sophia's eye across the table, and she offered me a faint grin in return, not the same smirk from years before, but something sincere. I'm the head of cardiac surgery at Harvard, 20 years after the erased alarm, and I oversee a school that prepares the next generation of surgeons. I operate on hearts that other surgeons believe cannot be repaired, and I educate residents that tough is simply another term for impossible. When students inquire about how I got here or how I developed this career, I tell them the truth. My sister ruined my medical school interview, erased my alarm, concealed my keys, and robbed me of my opportunity to attend my dream school. She attempted to ruin my future because she was worried that I would surpass her, but in the process, she inspired me to become exceptional. I tell them about operating on Sophia's aneurysm, about saving the life of the person who had attempted to destroy mine, about choosing to be a surgeon rather than a victim, and that sometimes the people who hurt you the most teach you the most important lessons. I also tell them that betrayal can be fuel if you're angry and stubborn enough to not let it break you. Some of them have their own Sophias, their own saboteurs, and some of them comprehend. I teach those pupils that the greatest response to betrayal is to live well, and that the finest retaliation is to become so successful that those who attempted to stop you must see your accomplishment. We now speak a few times a year. Sophia is a successful neurosurgeon who owns her own clinic in California. She is recognized and skilled in her field, albeit not as motivated as I am. I sometimes wonder what might have happened if I had allowed someone else to operate on her aneurysm, if I had stepped back and let Dr. Evans handle it after he finished his other surgery, if I had chosen vengeance over medicine, but that was never really a choice. Because I'm a surgeon before I'm a betrayed sister. She never had another health crisis, and she never required another surgery. Because it's more important to save lives than to settle scores. I stand at the front of the room and think about the 23-year-old me. My name is now on the Emily Turner Surgical Education Center, the Harvard Lecture Hall where I teach. It is supported by my speaking fees and textbook royalties, and students come in every week to learn from me. That version of myself had no idea she'd end up here, teaching at the school that turned her down, running the program she wasn't good enough to attend, saving lives with hands that learned precision from sheer willpower. She was devastated and betrayed, watching her future vanish because someone she trusted had sabotaged her. Every surgery I do, every life I save, every student I train, that's proof that betrayal doesn't have to be the end of your story. Sometimes it's just the beginning of becoming who you were always meant to be. My sister attempted to destroy me, but instead she made me invincible. Last year, Sophia and I met up at a conference, drank coffee in between sessions, and discussed our lives, professions, and the gap between our former selves and current selves. She asked whether I had ever really forgiven her, and I told her that I had, but forgiveness wasn't the proper word. She did, however, alter the course of my life, making me more determined, harder, and less trusting. Those were facts to be accepted, not things to be forgiven. In a strange sense, though, I'm thankful that you pushed me out, since I doubt I would have pushed this hard otherwise. Slowly, she nodded. I created my own monster. No, you produced a surgeon skilled enough to preserve your life in a time of need. It isn't a monster. That's just someone who refused to let you win. We finished our coffee and walked to separate sessions, and as I watched her leave, I felt nothing. No animosity, no wrath, no anguish lingered. Just the peaceful contentment that comes from knowing that I had created a life that she couldn't harm, that all I had accomplished had been built on the worst thing she had ever done to me. I became a surgeon because my sister ruined my medical school interview, and I was good enough to rescue her, not because she deserved it, but because I had developed the ability to save others, even those who attempted to destroy me. The true form of retaliation is not hurting them back, but mastering your art to the point where you surpass their treachery completely, and become absolutely exceptional in spite of all the challenges they put in your way. I became the greatest in my industry because she attempted to make me fail, and every day I work and save lives is evidence that she didn't succeed.